All right. All right. Sorry, Simpiwe and I have been dealing with a couple of technical issues. So for some reason, we are not live on Facebook this morning, but we're trying to get the rest up and running. And hopefully you can hear us on all the others. So if you are on the Cliff Central app, if you are on Twitter, if you are on YouTube, you could probably hear us loud and clear right now. So let us know. And join us in the comments section, which is alive and well this morning. And everybody's saying, Babalas Fridays. No, I wish. I mean, if you knew how boring my Thursday was, you would feel sorry for me. You'd have exactly the opposite point of view. All right, let's get cracking, everybody. It is Friday morning, and the birds are chirping outside, which is good news, which means spring is on the way. And it's always nice at this time of year. Well, it starts to get nice. I mean, I saw that across the country, actually, today is looking pretty bleak and pretty chilly and cold. Not much to look forward to in terms of the weather for this weekend. But you never know. It might change. In a week, everything could be different. In a week, everything could be perfect and it could be lovely. So let us know what you're up to this morning. We've, of course, got Ben. He's going to be joining us in a short while. It's always good fun. We'll find out how the beard went on his side. He decided to keep it for a week longer than me. So he's got an update for us on that. And we'll also get into a guest that we've got a little bit later on called Kim Stevens, who I'm looking forward to speaking to too. She's written a very, very funny book about lockdowns, about love, about a whole lot of stuff. So I read that yesterday. And we'll talk to Kim a bit later on as well. We've also got George Meany joining us for the Auto Trader podcast a little bit later on. Okay, so many things to get to today. I read a really interesting article over the course of the week. It was something written by Terence Corrigan in the Daily Friend, and I think it deserves a little bit of attention. We may even get Terence on the show at some point. But I thought this is quite interesting. So he starts off talking about the Pope, who in a video appeal described small and medium businesses as essential parts of the communities in which they operate, and talked about how difficult the pandemic had been for people who run small businesses and medium businesses. He said they had stoically endured with, and he quotes him, courage, effort, and sacrifice. They invest in life, creating well-being opportunities and work. So the Pope obviously had a very good point there. I don't think anyone has any major argument with him on that front. And, there are lots of people who teach, some sympathy for business. And the Catholic Church, according to Terence anyway, isn't an institution that necessarily doesn't do its bit for business. They don't have a problem for it. But this Pope in practice inclines directly to the left. And they obviously have a preferential option for the poor, which I think a lot of institutions do. A lot of people feel sorry for the poor. A lot of people feel guilty about the poor. A lot of people feel that they wish they could do more for the poor in the world. And for some reason, I don't know where this comes from, but the point that Terence gets to is that people feel small and medium enterprises are a bit like the poor of the business world. And so they tend to feel sorry for the poor. They tend to feel sorry for small businesses. They tend to feel, shame. They're somehow more virtuous because they're small businesses, which is a little bit ridiculous because nobody gets into business to have people feel sorry for them or to have people feel that somehow I certainly, as the owner of a small business, didn't get into it so that people would go, at least he's not a big business, which I'm sure a lot of small business people feel. So he said it's weird. Small businesses are a force for good. He says they are a keystone for communities. They represent moral, sacrificial activity, and they're agents for active, positive change. They embody something about service as well. But he said the problem is that no mention is ever made when people talk about small business for money or profit, which is the reason that they started. No one starts a small business, otherwise they'd start an NGO. No one starts a small business because they want to feel like better than weak business, It's just unbelievable to me that this is something that we even have to clarify, because that whole leftist idea of the virtuous poor seems to have moved into the business realm, where now people who always inherently would have been anti-business feel they're a little bit less anti-small business. Does that make sense? And he goes on to describe a couple of things in this article, which is well worth reading. I mean, he puts it out in a much more simple way than, and a much more straightforward and eloquent way than I suppose I'm putting across now. But he says, this really irritates him, and he quotes this passage, which I'm going to quote as well. It says, when you buy from a small business, you're not helping a CEO buy a third home. You're helping a little girl get dance lessons, a little boy get his team jersey, a mum or dad put food on the table, a family to pay a mortgage, or a student pay for college. This is deeply patronizing and condescending, isn't it? I mean, nobody who starts a small business wants to stay in that realm of just making ends meet like a subsistence farmer. I mean, anyone who started any business, whether it's a tiny little street vendor who's trying to sell enough stuff to do exactly these things that we've just mentioned, even he would love his business to grow beyond that, where he can employ 10 other street vendors to be selling stuff. He can be managing it, he can be running the thing, but he doesn't want to be known for forevermore as someone who's just scraping by. He would love his businesses to be tremendous successes. He'd love to buy that third home as the CEO of his street vendor operation. He would love to do more than just get his daughter dance lessons. I'm sure that he'd like to make enough money to be able to, build a whole new school in his area. Maybe even build the school as a business. But this is where people fall off the, oh, we love small business bandwagon. I just think it's a really good article because it points out what is so obvious about the way people always have praise and nice things to say and, a special place in their heart for the small businesses. And even during lockdown, you saw lots of people talking about this. They were like, well, lockdown is going to hit the small and medium businesses the hardest. And they were the same people who were always saying, oh, don't worry about the rich or the middle class. Who cares about them? It's about the poor. It's these people who they try to grab a little bit of the good for them. Why is there no sound? No sound on the app. That's irritating. Just see if we can figure. We've had so many technical issues this morning. Poor Simpiwe is trying her backside off in the studio to connect things. So to my mind, it doesn't make any sense at all that these people who praise the small businesses but actually hate enterprise because their desperate driving passion is equality, right? They actually just want everyone to be equal, whether that's equally miserable or equally prosperous. They never really care about that. They're okay if it's equal misery. They're okay if it's equal prosperity, I think. But the minute you get too prosperous, the moment you do too well, the moment your product sells more than it should, or the moment your service becomes more popular than they like, then suddenly they must tear you down. And this is my problem, is that I actually think a lot of this lip service that people have been paying to small and medium businesses doesn't come from a good place. It actually comes from a place of exactly the same sorts of ideologies that are tinged with this condescending, patronizing, nasty kind of, jealous, really, covetous, bitter and resentful stuff, which is, it actually disturbs me a little bit. And I've got to congratulate Terence because I've never actually seen anyone articulate this problem quite this way before. And next time you hear anybody saying really nice things about small businesses, ask them if they'd still feel that way if the business overnight became $1 million business. Because they may immediately go, yes. But if you interrogate it a bit further and you say, okay, so if they're not just subsistence businesses anymore, and suddenly they start turning a real profit, and maybe they invest their money in other businesses, or they start new things, then suddenly that person is like, nah, I don't actually know if I support that anymore. Well, now they're beyond the need of my support. Then you know what kind of a person you're dealing with. Anyway, Jim says, I guess it all depends on the definition of a small business. I'm in the UK and definitions differ vastly. Well, that's a problem, because also it's part of the name, right, that it's condescending. It's like, you small little business. Medium-sized business. Of course, those people hate and loathe big business. They hate corporations. And we can't help doing that, a lot of us. But there are plenty of big businesses that we could not do without on a daily basis. That if those big businesses crashed and burned tomorrow, we'd find ourselves in a very, very complicated situation. I'm talking about, food retailers. I'm talking about the oil businesses. I'm talking about businesses that we rely on for medical aid, for hospitals, for private schooling. All of those, if those collapsed, big business like those, you wouldn't be able to drive your car. You wouldn't be able to feed your family. Of course, there are, a couple of corner grocers and those sorts of things. But by and large, we need those big businesses. So this idea of like business is the enemy, it's nothing short of a purposeful, direct, and I think quite nefarious dislike of other people doing well. And that resentment you can hear in the way people talk about it. And Cunning Stunt says quite rightly, small businesses can churn millions a month. Well, yes, again, by your definition. But you can hear the way that I read that description of, it pays for a little girl's dance lessons, or, it pays for the little boy to get his school's, team uniform or whatever. This is all great. As long as you don't get beyond a certain level of success, then those people who love small businesses suddenly turn on you. And they go, oh, no, we don't like you anymore. As soon as, it's a lot like society. There are certain people in the world who are very happy for you to be moderately successful. Like, they don't want you to be dirt poor, because then they might have to help you. But the moment you become a little bit more successful than that, where they feel you're maybe better than them, and people are like this, I mean, what can you do? Then suddenly, you're doing too well now. He's become too full of himself. He's too big for his boots. She used to be very nice, but I don't know if I like her anymore, that kind of thing. So I'm a little bit annoyed with this whole idea. Congo Chris says, is my OnlyFans considered a small business? Yes, Chris, it's a small business, especially in your case. Is it a fair thing to assume that big businesses started as small ones? Coca-Cola didn't originally sell billions of bottles. I'm sure at some point they were a small brick and mortar shop. Exactly. But as soon as they became a corporation, a lot of people who liked them before stopped liking them, even though they kept buying their products, ironically. There are a couple of points here that I kind of agree with. And then just to check on this, both the Cliff Central app and the website are not working. Lucky we still have YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. We're trying to figure out what went on there. But there is a problem. I think we're back on the app, but I'm waiting for an update. Those people never support with their money anyway. No one cares what they think. Well, that's also true. I mean, there are these people who say, for example, that they won't support. We've got an outbreak of foot and mouth disease in this country at the moment, which means that we can't actually move our cattle around, even to abattoirs and things. Certain countries in sub-Saharan Africa are not buying our meat anymore, not for this while we're dealing with this foot and mouth outbreak. And it's a serious thing. A lot of people like foot and mouth. Well, it's not the rinderpest. And there was actually an outbreak of foot and mouth, I think in the 90s, which hit the farmers quite hard. But just to illustrate the point that's being made here, now suddenly countries like Botswana are saying, oh no, we don't want to buy South African meat. And the farmers, again, are having a tough time. So I saw them on the TV news yesterday. And this one farmer was saying, it's obviously very hard. Not that many people want to buy our meat, blah, blah, blah. And then the woman on the news said to him, what do you think about these meat substitutes, like these soy, meat substitutes where it's actually not meat at all, but they advertise it like meat. Remember, I even said the other day that I bought something. It was like maybe sausages or something, but I didn't read carefully what was on the packet. And only when I got home and 2 or 3 days later decided, okay, I'm going to cook these things, did I see that they were actually made of like a meat substitute. Now, it's fine if you went to the shop to buy a meat substitute. My sister's a vegetarian. She eats a lot of that stuff. I don't like it. And I don't happen to take kindly to the fact that they fooled me into buying this stuff. It doesn't say clearly meat substitute. You have to look very carefully. So it was my fault. I'm not going to blame the manufacturers or anything. And I don't hate meat substitutes or think that they should be banished. But to get home and to find that these things weren't what they said they were, or what I thought. They didn't say, they didn't lie. But what I thought they were when I got them off the shelf was annoying. And this guy was like, well, yeah, meat substitutes aren't the real thing. And that's pretty much also a point that I think is worth making, is we're not stupid. We can tell if we've got the real thing or not. So a couple of things to think about there. We'll get to a couple of headlines later on, but here he is. Here's Ben. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Gareth. How's it going?
Well, good, except we've had a couple of technical issues this morning, which we're still dealing with. So if you are listening to us on YouTube this morning, watching us on YouTube, or if you are on the app, maybe you're having some luck on our website too. We're trying to figure out what the problem is, but we're definitely not on Facebook this morning. I see the beard is definitely gone, Ben.
It has, Gareth. Yeah. I was going to take it to Australia, to try fit in culturally. And then I just thought, fuck it, it's just not working.
No, it's definitely gone.
There was, there was a moment thing just weighing up. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, blowing my nose, but I'm trying to think what's going on here with this thing doesn't switch on. That thing is the lights going. It's a whole lot of problems here. Anyway, so you were going to wear it to Australia and then you decided no.
Yeah, and I just don't think it was winning. Like beards are like anything else. You've got to be really good at it, or just don't even bother. And the thing is, unless you can get hair to come up to about here, you're going to have this little straggly little, like ultimate, and then it starts to curl a bit. And so I tried to trim it, and it just wasn't kind of working. But also kind of realized, like I haven't got too many great summers left in me. I can't be fucking around with the way I present myself. I can't be single forever. And it really hit home on Wednesday. I mean, I know there's probably other factors at play here, but this little moment really hit home. I came out of this gym in Melrose Arch. I was meant to interview this guy, but as I got there, I found out that he had an emergency and he couldn't be interviewed. So I get out of this gym and I'm standing there slightly pissed off, actually. And I'm fumbling for my sunglasses. And probably the most beautiful girl that I've seen in Joburg for maybe, 10 years is walking towards me.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I never see really good looking girls in public in this place ever. Right. Ever. And as she kind of approached me, I looked her in the eyes. She kind of looked me in her eyes, and she had this look on her face like she'd smelt something. It wasn't a good look. And I was just thinking, like, that's maybe my beard. Could have been my Paddington Bear jersey I was wearing, or the fact that I was just a guy standing with tripods next to the street. But what I took out of it was that my beard is not attractive, and I need to be as attractive as I can be. And I mean, like, if you're listening and you're a girl that went to move in Melrose on Wednesday, I'm clean shaven. I'm not that scary.
Yeah, basically, give me another chance.
Yeah, she seemed really great. I mean, she didn't seem too happy, but she seemed really great, and I just thought, like, that was the moment for me. I feel like a half bearded weirdo. So I'm done with it for life now.
No, I listen. I know exactly what you're talking about. I had mine on for 3 weeks. I think we did it, and I just couldn't wait to get rid of the damn thing. In fact, last Friday, straight after the show, I got rid of it, and then over the weekend, I felt like a new person. Plus, it literally shaves off like a couple of years. you only realize that. I think a lot of guys have beards because they don't like their faces. Let's be honest. There are guys who grow beards for all the positive reasons, but there are a lot of guys who also grow beards because they don't like the shape of their faces. Maybe they have bad skin. Maybe they, they're trying to look a little more manly. I'm not sure what it is, but for some explicable reason, I just feel like I'm cleaner, more presentable.
Totally.
I'm not chasing any kind of a look. That's why it wasn't a problem to do it, but I'm glad it's gone. So yeah, I'm with you on that front.
Yeah, I don't really have a reason to grow a beard other than just experimentation, and that's been done now, and on we go.
I don't want to. We're back on the app, by the way. I've just got a note from the producers that we are back and live on the app. I don't want to beat up on a granny because that's just mean. But did you see these pictures that were floating around? Sometimes on YouTube or on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever you might be on social media, they send you these clips and you can kind of scroll through most of them. And for some reason, even though I'm not subscribed to Jimmy Fallon, because I find like the Tonight Show is probably one of the most childish shows that I've ever seen. In fact, the only TV talk show that I can actually bear watching anymore because it isn't childish. The rest of them, it's so dumb. They make these celebrities do dumb things. Literally they've got celebrities with skipping ropes and like playing dumb games like you would play with people who you don't know and who you don't have anything to talk about with. And they make them play these games like you do in that situation when you're kind of out of ideas. So you say to everybody, I know what to do, guys. And I've been to these parties before, where someone's like, everybody's not interested in talking to each other, or they're really boring people. And then someone goes, let's play a game. And someone says that. So this is what these TV shows are like. And they had Madonna on with Jimmy Fallon. Now, we've discussed Madonna before on the show. And again, like I said a minute ago, I don't really think it's very good taste to beat up on grannies. We all get older. Some of us look a lot worse than we did when we were 20. Some of us look a bit better than we did when we were 30. Some of us are at our best, and some of us have moved way beyond that into the territory of like truly looking old. But that's not my problem with Madonna. It's not that she's old. It's that she's completely age inappropriate and that she's doing her best to look horrible, if you ask me. First of all, she looked like a homeless person, just the way she was dressed. Look at this picture. It's like she's wearing either those are tracksuit pants or it's a blankie, like the Queen wears when she goes in an open cart because her little knees get cold. And she's got these, I've never understood those kind of, what do you even call them? It's almost like stockings for your forearms. They're like lacy, kind of half glove things that go up to the elbow. She's wearing a New York t-shirt, and then she's got like a bandana around her neck. But she looks scruffy. It's not a bandana, it's a bunch of necklaces. She looks scruffy as hell. And then she's got this piece of mouth jewelry, which is worth discussing. And her hair looks like, like when you meet someone they've colored their hair, but they've actually run out of money. So the roots start growing back in. And then it looks like they either need to go and recolor their hair or that they should stick to their natural color because the half and half, the skunk look, doesn't look so great. That kind of thing? That's what she's got going on there as well.
Gareth, she looks like a 90s icon.
No, but Ben, she looked like a 90s icon in the 90s.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. What she's got going there is she just got back to the 90s for a look.
It's horrible to see, man. And I just think like this is a woman who she works very hard. You cannot criticize her work ethic. She's still doing, 3-4 concerts a week. She works her backside off. Yeah. She's a busy woman, travels the world. But there's something about like this look that is just so off-putting especially when you consider her age. But as I say, I'm not being ageist here. I want to be clear about the fact that there are lots of older women who you can see have aged gracefully that still look very attractive. But for a woman of 64, I just don't know that this is a great look. Got to
But
be honest with you.
Don't you think this is one of the most tedious things about being celebrities? Because she's like, you can't ever grow old gracefully in the civilian sense. As a celebrity, you have to keep playing it up. So she probably thinks, and she's entitled to it, like she's actually killing it at the age of 64, that she can still look like that. But that's what you got to do. You got to keep like on this treadmill of be seen in a certain way, and carrying on for endless time.
I mean, maybe. I don't feel that way when I look at her. I kind of agree with Terence here in the comments, who says Madonna's trying too hard. She should take a class or two from J-Lo or Halle Berry on how to age gracefully. Congo Chris says she desperately is trying to stay relevant. Someone needs to take old Bessie out to pasture. That's a bit mean, but yeah.
So just going back to the whole thing about Jimmy Fallon, all those talk shows, as you know, they do what they do because they don't want to offend anybody. So all they end up doing is playing so childish bullshit because they are so incredibly beige.
That is true. I couldn't agree with you more. But the one show I can still watch is Bill Maher, because Bill talks about, politics. He talks about things that are actually happening in society. He doesn't play to the audience either. I mean, Bill Maher has often said to his audience, "Oh, you don't think that's funny? Well, fuck you," kind of thing, which I've always liked, because even if it's stuff I disagree with him on, stuff that I wouldn't agree with him intellectually, ideologically, politically about, he goes ahead and says it anyway, which I appreciate. You always know where you stand with him, and he's clever. He doesn't sit there and ask his guests stupid things he already knows the answer to. With these TV shows, like, for example, Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or Trevor Noah, they pre-interview each of the guests, even if they're celebrities, which is why you always get that one really funny story, and they tee it up by going, "Hey, so tell us, Tom Cruise, you almost hurt yourself while you were on the set of the latest Top Gun movie." And then Tom tells a fun story about how he actually flew the jet, and he hurt himself while coming down the stairs or whatever, because it's something they've prepared. Now, that doesn't happen with Bill's show, and it shouldn't happen in any good show. I know that they're in a ratings war, but that's already been lost, because, for example, the number of people who used to watch The Tonight Show when Jay Leno was on was something like 20 or 30 million people. Now, Jimmy Fallon will be considered extremely lucky, and he'll be doing the best job he can if he scored, 6 million people. People would be cheering. So I just think a lot of these shows have gone backwards. A lot of entertainment has gone backwards. It's become, okay, we've only got 20 minutes to try and grab this audience. We better get Tom Cruise to tell the best story he's got. So they prepare it. He's pre-interviewed. The host knows, because at least that's guaranteed laugh, God forbid you should actually get to know this person. So we'll play a game with them instead. It's just silly. It's really, really silly. Arm warmers and regrowth are the words that you're looking for Madonna. Arm warmers. What's regrowth?
It's when your hair, the regrowth.
Well, I don't know what that is. Why would I know anything about that?
Yes, you can't rip off a 65-year-old by sounding like a 66-year-old.
But I don't know what regrowth is, because I've never had my hair colored. So how would I know that word?
But you know what girls are, right? They go through that.
Of course. I've never asked a girl, what's that?
Are you that you can't even empathize with that?
Okay, well, sure. I mean, here's a good point, and maybe this is what I was also getting to, and David's got it like nailed down. He says she needs to do a Tina Turner and disappear quietly. I mean, here's the thing. She's made so much money. She's probably the second or third richest person in music history, right? She's done extremely well. And nobody in the world, even a person who's not a Madonna fan, and I used to be, I was always a fan of her music. I still, when I hear a Madonna song, it takes me back, right? Love it. It's good stuff. Who doesn't like a Prayer, for example? Great song. But it's that old horse is tired now. Stop flogging it. She doesn't have to keep reinventing herself. It's enough. Oh, please, Gareth, we all know you dye your hair. Oh, yeah. All right, whatever. The way he laughed at his own self in that clip, I would scream, idiot. I think who you're talking about.
Must
I'm
be
not
a
sure.
Jimmy.
Oh, Tom Cruise. Says this does Tom Cruise. I cannot stomach the man. He needs a slap. Hey, again, you could say he should also age gracefully, but I think it's different if you're a movie star. It's different if you're in movies because you're pretending, but in real life, I mean, Madonna's pretending in real life, which is part of the problem. Gareth is such a privileged natural blonde, says Melissa. Well, that's why I don't know what regrowth is. Yes, I'll take that privilege. Fame is a drug that is difficult to let go of. I don't know. There's nothing more honorable than someone who has had fame and they move on from it. Like they let it go. They leave it in the past. I think it's great. Speaking of not knowing when to retire, Elton John has a sold-out tour. Geez, I saw Elton John in a clip as well on the internet, and his security were leading him through some European town now this summer. And he's like a bent-over little man, and he kind of walks with his hands behind him like old men tend to do. But he's still got it, hey? Put him in front of that piano, and he can make it happen. So, I don't know. And I'd probably say Madonna still got it when she's on stage on one of her concerts. But I've always also admired Dolly Parton, who is a complete contrast to Madonna. So she dresses up for the stage and for the screen. But in real life, you probably wouldn't even recognize Dolly Parton. I mean, she often goes out to restaurants with her husband and nobody knows it's her because she puts on those big blonde wigs. She puts on those tarty dresses, the heavy makeup, and she looks like the Dolly Parton that we know. But apparently the real Dolly Parton looks nothing like that. She wears glasses. She's got darker hair. She just doesn't look at all like the woman that you think she is. I kind of like that. Anyway, old Dolly is the bomb diggity, says Melissa. We are apparently back on the app and on everything else. So if you've been wondering where we were this morning, for some reason we hit the snags with some technical issues, but we are back up and running. You can let us know what you think in the comments. Ben is here this morning. We've got lots to get to. I also want to talk about a couple of other things, Ben. You mentioned that there was a mullet competition in America.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know about this.
Absolute time-honored tradition. And we spoke about beards, and obviously, these are facial accessories, but the mullet, it just doesn't ever go away, does it? Like, we always think like, oh, it's Billy Ray Cyrus. Oh, it's Andre Agassi in the 80s. Oh, it's Brad Pitt when he was young. But the mullet is actually, it just keeps coming back. It's like you can't let it go. And this mullet competition is really great because what they do is they have a kids division. So
Yes.
these kids are like under 10, but they have the hairstyle of the gods, and it is down.
Right.
They've got those like fuckboy Kenny Powers like sunglasses on. It's just It's the full picture. And I'm looking at this kind of stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, look at these rednecks," and they all got strange names like Radar and Sonar and Destiny, all this kind of stuff. And I think, like, how cool must it be? Like, if you are, let's just call it like you're a redneck, okay? So like when you see all the winners in the top division, you see their states. It's all the middle of America. But how cool must it be for like a dad to be able to have a mullet, have a son, and then groom him to be the next generation of the mullets in the family? Like people always go on about like indigenous cultures and all of that kind of things, but like this is the pinnacle of these people's lives.
For sure. Well, I mean, you mentioned some of these names. So Mason Padilla, Epic Orta. I just love that name, Epic Orta. That's a guy's actual name. He's a kid, and just like we don't want to beat up on Madonna for the way she looks as a granny. It would be tasteless for us to mock and ridicule these kids. But my God, these hairstyles are. As mullets go, these are pretty magnificent.
I am not mocking or ridiculing the second. I will ridicule the All Blacks, the rugby team, because their mullets just look like poverty mullets. But look at these; these are luscious. They're just opulent. Like this kid has got so much confidence because of this. Look at that. Look at those glasses on the right.
Epic Orta, that's his name. It's fantastic. He's wearing the matching glasses and a shirt that beggars belief. His main competition was Brock Higgins. How's that mullet that Brock's got going on?
But don't you think it's like I'm really not joking here? In a world where people are like losing their minds about identity, these kids are waking up with mullets and they're going ahead with their lives. This is a really positive thing.
I think so. They're not going to have those identity issues that so many other kids have. Here's another one. This is great. This is Landry Turpin.
Stars and stripes on the side of his head.
That's extraordinary. From the Mullet Championships, Landry Turpin. From Duncan in what? I can't even tell. I think that's Ohio. Where was Brock Higgins from? He's from Georgia. And wow, Epic Auto is from La Joya in Texas. Who would have guessed that?
How much fun,
here's Nolan Bryant with a much more traditional looking mullet, and he's wearing a pair of dungarees.
See, but look
Nolan
at the range.
is from Oklahoma.
Look at the range. He's got like a skinny one with like proper business at the front.
Amazing. Here is Emmett Miller. Now Emmett's got that nice short fringe. Yeah. This is a proper old school mullet, and again the reflective glasses, which it seems are quite a thing at the moment.
You got to have those.
Yeah. Jamison Red is also from Oklahoma. Jamison must be, I don't know, 3-4 years old. He's the youngest by far. Emmett Bailey. Emmett seems to be a big name. Emmett, though, this one is spelt differently, and he's from Wisconsin. You got to admire this stuff, right, Ben?
So there's a teenage division, and there's obviously an open division with real men, and then there's an actual female division as well.
Because of course we need that.
Because you can be the mullet champion.
All right, so they've actually got a Hall of Fame if you go to the website.
Yeah,
that's quite something. They put famous people in there like Billy Ray Cyrus, Andre Agassi, Blake Shelton, Mario Lopez, Mel Gibson is in the Hall of Fame. Bono,
Bono actually. We forget that in the 80s, Bono had probably one of the greatest mullets ever.
Right. Patrick Swayze famously had a mullet, and Joe Dirt, who's a fictional character played by David Spade. But Joe Dirt, of course, has a place in the Hall of Fame as well. So, if these guys weren't taking the mullet back into being, the kind of thing that we should respect and admire, then I would be lost. I mean, where else would we get such spectacular, unbelievable, magnificent, glorious mullets? Well done to all the competitors. It's just great. Tracy says, why the hell isn't Steven Seagal in there, the ultimate mullet man?
Well, it's because he kind of defected to Russia, and in mullet culture, that's not really, acceptable.
Congo Chris reckons that's why you're single. You don't have a mullet. If you're going to be a stepdad, you need to get the look to match.
I don't want to be a stepdad, but Chris, you know what? I won't rule out anything. But I think I'm just past my mullet stage. I could have done it about 10 years ago. I'm not sure I could now.
Gijs says, Vernon Kukumur had a very famous mullet. We mustn't forget about him.
One of the best. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And by the way, a lot of people thanking you for tipping them off on that Woodstock 99 TV show, the TV series that you told us to watch. Somebody, who was it? My sister, I think the other day said to me, Jesus, she said, I've never seen like chaos like that before, the way they ruined that military base that they had the event at.
Yeah, I just, I'm sure people have seen it, and maybe this is a spoiler, but I'm amazed there weren't more legal suits or there weren't more things after that, because it was so fucking badly organized. It was actually like a massive threat to people's well-being. And I know the guy died shortly after. Maybe that was part of the stuff, and they just let it lie.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, it is quite frightening. I'm surprised too that there weren't any more lawsuits. But I think at that stage, maybe it was in the terms and conditions of the tickets that, whatever happens. Maybe that's why they had it where they did. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Steve Hofmeyer is also a famous mullet that we have to recognize here in South Africa anyway. Huge. Huge. Didn't Bon Jovi have a mullet? Yes, he did. Quite right,
Yeah,
Sonetta.
but there was a time where there were so many mullets, it wasn't really a thing, and that's why now it means more than ever to have a mullet. It really does, because it's just so. Like, how else do you describe it? There's a certain kind of person gets a mullet.
Yeah, that
You either have
certain
it or
kind
you
of person. Yeah, but the problem is that certain kind of person carries a whole lot of connotations with it that are not my favorite kinds of things to be known for. So as much as I admire these kids, I also can't help thinking that, again, a mullet is a cultural thing. And even though for some people it represents a lack of culture, for the people who wear their mullets with pride, that's part of their culture. They're proud of it. It's interesting. Here's a quick headline, and I want your comment on this, Ben. Typical, the guy who stabbed Salman Rushdie, because he was acting on the fatwa that the Iranian Ayatollah placed on Salman Rushdie years ago. Salman was stabbed in upstate New York. He famously wrote the Satanic Verses, which is what got him the fatwa from the Ayatollah all those years ago. The guy who stabbed him, guess how many pages of the Satanic Verses he read?
0.
You would be close. 2. He read 2 pages of the Satanic Verses. Yeah. So Hadi Matar, who's 24, pleaded not guilty to charges stemming from the assault. I mean, you stab a person, but you're pleading not guilty. In an interview with the New York Post from jail, Mr. Matar said Salman was someone who attacked Islam. So there we go. For all those people who were looking for a different kind of motive, now we know the motive. It was clear to everybody from the start, but there were people going, it couldn't possibly be because he doesn't like, Salman and he's an Islamist. Yes, he clearly is. Anyway, he did not confirm that his alleged actions were directly driven by the fatwa issued by Iran, but in a court appearance, he was ordered to be held without bail after the accused entered a not guilty plea. He says he didn't read very much of the book. He said he only read 1 or 2 pages and said that he had been inspired by the fatwa, among other things. He said, I respect the Ayatollah. I think he's a great person. That's as far as I'll go on that. So an all-around great human being, this guy.
But also, with the heat that's been around that guy for so long, how can security be so average? Personal or through the events.
Agreed.
There's going to be some weirdo out there. I mean, Dave Chappelle was tackled on stage. Chris Rock was slapped by an irate simp. These things happen. How can you have such shit security?
Especially for someone like Salman Rushdie, who there was a direct edict to kill him out there. Now apparently he's in recovery. He may not be able to use his one eye ever again. And ironically, he was on stage to talk about how America is one of the few places in the world where you can say what's on your mind. Free speech. So Americans are again going to have to look at what kind of a world they've allowed activists to create, because to put not too fine a point on it, there are a lot of people in society who've been saying for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe the last 10, if you've been on university campuses, words are violence, right? So if words are violence, then violence is the same as words, which means stabbing someone isn't that big a deal. This is what those people believe. And that's why these words are violence people are morons. And they should be treated as dangerous people because they don't know the difference between stabbing someone or someone saying something they don't like, because words are violence, right? I didn't say that. They said that. So these are the people we are engaged in a battle with in the Western world at the moment. The words are violence crew. And if you know anybody who says words are violence, that, by someone dead naming a transgender person, that's violence. By someone denying that they agree with, gender or feminist ideology, that's violence. Well, okay, good luck to you then. But those are the enemies of a free Western civilization. And it's worth mentioning that this Friday morning. Okay, we are at 7:00. We will be back in a moment or two. Still sorting out one or two technical issues, but don't go anywhere. Ben is here with us. We've got a guest joining us in a short while. CliffCentral.com, Friday morning.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
I'm gonna put it up. I think the producers have an image of it. So I think
a Veyron.
It's a Veyron. A Bugatti Veyron was in 2018. It's probably a lot more now. Was recorded as the most expensive car to hire.
Price?
335,000 rand per day.
There goes my 10 grand of my maths.
Yeah, which is why I was like, yeah, okay, times 10, no? So yeah, 335,000 rand a day to hire a Bugatti Veyron.
Well, I mean, I suppose there's not many of these around, right?
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Thomas Anders from Modern Talking knows they exist. Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet once saw an email from them. Someone who works for Rick Astley liked their Instagram post. And Chesney Hawkes? Well, Chesney Hawkes was just really lovely. That 80s Show meets your favorite 80s artists. Hours of interviews right now on cliffcentral.com. It's the biggest collection of nostalgia since you cleaned your childhood bedroom. That 80s Show. New episodes every Friday, live or as a podcast on cliffcentral.com.
All right. It is Friday morning. It's the 19th of August, and it is a beautiful day. It's looking like it's going to be a chilly but lovely weekend. Everybody's excited about that. Let us know what you're up to, and give us a shout on the YouTube comments. Also, email us if you've got anything that you want us to cover, any ideas, any guests that you'd like us to have, any people that you feel would make a valuable contribution. You can do that by emailing contact@cliffcentral.com. So, Ben, you're off to Australia, and you're going to be doing one of those serious long-haul flights.
So long.
What is your plan for keeping yourself alive and entertained over the long-haul flight?
So it's currently 3:03 in Melbourne at the moment in the afternoon. So I'm trying to obviously work towards acclimatizing towards that. Mm-hmm. So I think the best thing to do, the first flight is going to be SAS Singapore, which I should try to sleep in. But like when I haven't had a long haul flight since I went to go visit High Rob like 3 years ago. And as I'm still an absolute kid when it comes to travel. I like to watch a movie. I like to have like 3 beers. Like that 3 beer buzz, which is like the best buzz to watch a movie. And then sort of like, but like watch like shit movies. Like you watch, I don't know, whatever the latest Marvel thing is, or you watch a rom-com.
Right.
You're going somewhere, it's cool. Because you can never sleep properly. And I just realized now I just forgot my neck pillow at home. Oh, idiot.
Are you going straight from the office?
Yeah, I'm going straight from here. So the idea is
you can just buy those things at the airport. They're not expensive.
But but I've got like 4 already because I've done that before. Forget, buy. It's kind of like those Woolworths shopping bags. That's what I have with neck pillows. So the idea is to try to get some sleep between here and Singapore. But then from Singapore to Melbourne, like that's another 8 hours, and then I get to Melbourne 8 o'clock Saturday. Yeah, it's long. That's a lot.
Yeah. And also, whenever you travel east, you kind of lose time, and it feels like it feels almost as if you've been cheated out of a couple of hours, which is true. You have on the clock. It's easy to fly west. When you fly west, you don't feel so grumpy about it, and you gain time, so you end up getting there sometimes without losing it a day at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a pretty exciting prospect. That and it's been quite a lot of hard work to make sure we're prepared for this trip, and I just want to go and be somewhere else for a bit.
Do you ever do sleeping pills on a flight?
No, I'm not big on taking any sort of medication unless I really, really have to. I don't like to tamper with what I'm trying with my body ever.
Well, Congo Chris, talking about your body, he is most concerned with constipation. So he has this advice: don't have beers, have Bloody Marys on a long flight. Jet lag is bad, but long flight constipation is much worse. A Bloody Mary solves that problem. Well, that's some useful info. I've never had long flight constipation. I'm sorry to hear about that.
No, it's interesting here because, well, you get people who go away and they can never make a poo because they're not comfortable. Yeah, it's a big thing. So dehydration is a massive thing when you travel. You got to try and move it a little bit. Obviously, as you get older, you got to worry about these things. And if you can't have a poo for 2 days, that's not good for you, especially with the kind of food that you're eating. It's like I have a very healthy regime, which is really good. My body functions well. Now I'm going to go into a position where I'm not going to probably eat as well for 2 whole weeks. That's shitty.
Yeah. Well, that's also when you travel, you can't be a stickler for what kind of food you're going to have, because also you're going to go out for dinner a couple of times. You're not going to have necessarily the sort of food that you're used to back home. I mean, Australian cuisine, if there is such a thing, is I don't want to be rude about them now, but if there is such a thing as Australian cuisine, it's probably not that different to ours, right? I mean, I don't think we eat very, very different things.
No, and I'm in Melbourne, and Melbourne's probably a bit fancier than most places in Australia, I think.
Yeah, Melbourne apparently is the restaurant capital of Australia, if not one of the best cities in the world to eat out in. I remember friends of mine who'd been there saying it's just absolutely amazing. And there's such variety there. So I don't think you're going to be too tortured. And then you're doing Brisbane as well, right?
Yeah, 3 days in Brisbane, which is apparently just Margate, basically. It's just like
Margate.
Margate, yeah.
I've heard much nicer things said about the Gold Coast than that. I mean, yeah. And you're not doing Sydney at all. Have you done Sydney before in a previous trip?
Never. I mean, I live in Alovo, so I don't think going to Sydney is going to be much different for that. It's just sort of
God, these
people.
These comparisons. So basically, according to you, Sydney's like Alovo in Johannesburg. Brisbane is like Margate. What are you expecting Melbourne to be like?
Cape Town with more beards. No, it's going to be cold here. It's exactly like Cape Town. It's on the same latitude, I think. So it's going to be rough for end of winter.
Are you going to interview any bogans?
No. This is very much like I'm presenting and pitching. That's no reason why I ever shave. I'm kind of like a nurse on stage.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so Tracy has some useful info here. She says, apart from being quite expensive, Australian food is great. I love the Melbourne vibe. Beautiful place. Yeah, it's apparently what really is just a first-class city. So there we go. Tracy says Brisbane is like Miami. So get it right there. And Ben used to work with a guy with a shy bladder. Oh, sorry, not Ben, but Corona's Boring used to work with a guy with a shy bladder. He was a bit of a dick, so people would whisper, "What's taking him so long?" outside the toilet door and clear out as soon as it flushed. It's so mean. That is so mean. And yeah, there are lots of useful tips here for you on what it's going to be like in Australia. So do let us know once you're back. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be, because of the time zone difference, you're not going to be able to talk to us from there. So we'll wait to catch up with you when you get back.
Well, yeah. So I mean, if I'm free on a Friday at like 2:30, then sure, I'm all in. But
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not entirely sure with our schedule.
yeah, and it's not like you're going to a third world country or anything where you should have internet, right?
Here's hoping. Yeah, staying in an apartment which should have good Wi-Fi, and then we're going to be at this. Yeah, like we'll be in civilized, built-up places.
All right, sounds good. It sounds very good. Just one other quick thing before you go. You seem to have been a bit late to this party, but you didn't notice that Mandela Day came and went in the month of July, and we're already in August. Did this suddenly occur to you over the week?
I was thinking about it recently. Yeah, like whatever happened to Mandela Day? It was clearly I've forgotten about it. I didn't bring it up during the time, but wasn't this like a really big deal? I thought at one stage it was a public holiday, but clearly not.
Yeah, I actually mentioned that there was a company doing an event, and I happened to be in a meeting, and this one guy was like, "Oh, but you know, the 18th of July is Mandela Day. It's a public holiday," and everyone around the table kind of had to check their diaries to make sure that was or wasn't the case. It isn't the case, and you're right. Like it just sort of went by this year. I don't think anybody made a big fuss. I didn't see a whole lot of people posting their 67 minutes. So yeah, I think it's maybe, you know, the oxygen's out of the room with that one.
Yeah, it's this whole thing of like, this day will make us become better people and give back and all this kind of stuff. But even like the corporates, because again, it's like, is it now cultural appropriation for a corporate to do Mandela Day?
Well, it was a very competitive thing, because if you didn't do something, then it was shameful. It used to be that, you know, that these big companies felt bad and were made to feel bad if they didn't do something for Mandela Day. But I don't think this year there was any of that pressure at all.
I remember that like last year even. And do you remember that thing, the CEO sleep out? Even that was then deemed offensive.
Yeah, that was a problem, because then they were what by going out and staying in a sleeping bag for one night, they were like mocking the poor and the homeless, because
even though they were raised for like community projects, some absolute prick decided that this was really culturally offensive.
Oh, everything's offensive these days. And if you can't find something to be offended by, that you just don't count. That's what gets you currency these days on the internet. Anyway, all right, Ben, listen, enjoy your trip. I know you have to go.
Yeah.
Give an update once you're there or once you're back. We'd love to hear what your experience of Melbourne and Brisbane and those places are. And have a good weekend.
Fantastic, Gareth. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'll try to be on. Otherwise, I'll send some video clips or something that you can play at any time.
Awesome. Great stuff.
Okay.
All right, there we go. That's Ben, and that brings us to a whole different stage of the show. We're going to talk to, in a moment, Kim Stevens, who's written this very, very funny book called Hold the Line, which I'm excited to talk to her about. That's coming up next. I do have to quickly remind you of a couple of things. There were some headlines earlier on. We may or may not get to some more of those in a short while. But for decades, in case you don't know this, rural children in South Africa have suffered from a debilitating condition, an estrangement from learning that causes a lifetime of struggle. And you probably don't know this if you live in a city, but rural kids, obviously, it's much further to go. It's much harder to obtain a quality education. Some of those schools have no resources whatsoever. And it's a very dire situation. But there is an NPO in Mpumalanga, which is called the Good Work Foundation, and they're providing an antidote. If you want to know more about what we're talking about here, you can listen to the latest episode of Future Impact to find out how they changed the average pass rate from 23% to 96% in 2 years. That is extraordinary. It's available wherever you get your podcasts and brought to you by Investec. Check it out also on the cliffcentral.com website. That is Future Impact, which you can go and take a listen to today. You want to know how school can change their average pass rate from 23 to 96%? You can find out how. And well done to that NPO that is helping so many school kids in Mpumalanga. It's called the Good Work Foundation. Go and find out more by listening to the podcast. So Kim Stevens is a Cape Town-based writer, a mother, and a runner. And she loves a little bit of political satire and has written this incredibly funny book where she's actually reprinted a bunch of Facebook posts that she made during lockdown. And I think there are very few people in South Africa who can't identify with some of the frustration, the anger, a lot of the humor, that many of us have either banished to a part of our brains where we don't want to think about it anymore, or if you read through it like I did yesterday, you'll look at the book and go, oh my God, I remember that. That was awful. That was horrible. That was the worst stage in my adult life, to have to put up with all these crazy rules. I found myself agreeing with Kim a lot more than I thought I would through the course of this book. Kim, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks very much for having me.
No, terrific work, and well done on the book.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'm walking around naked at the moment. That's a scary thing when you put a book out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, it's an easy read. Hey, I got to congratulate you on that too. It didn't take me very. Look, it's an easy book to read, but it's also not a very long. We're not talking War and Peace here, so
No,
you could probably
definitely
you can get through it in a day or two if you have a bit of time, and it's really funny. But as I said a minute ago, it was funny also reading your. Is that your dog or is that your stomach?
Sorry, yes, it's my dog. I'm going to try and sweep them out of here. We've got a foster puppy at the moment and it's causing trouble. Sorry.
Don't worry. I have one that's always asking to be put on my lap, so I feel your pain. Yeah. I'm just relieved that isn't your stomach. That's all.
No, it's although I mean, so early in the morning, it's a little bit difficult. It could have been.
So, I mentioned a moment ago when I read these Facebook posts, it kind of reminds me of a time that I'm not sure I want to be reminded of.
I know, it was a crazy time. Did you watch Tiger King?
No, I never got into that. But I did
for a while. And I was like, what are we watching? What is going on? It was a very strange time. So I wanted to document that strange time because, I don't know, it just is a little piece of history in South Africa that had so many layers attached to it. There were so many political connotations to what we were experiencing, so many personal connotations, and there was some awful stuff going on, businesses folding and people without income and kids isolated.
No, of course.
And, but there was a lot of funny stuff too. So I tried to bring humor to the situation.
So two things I completely understood and had total sympathy with, and let's just say we were in simpatico about your love for Johannesburg, which very few people are able to express a love for Johannesburg. Now, you're actually a Cape Town girl, and Cape Townians in particular never have a nice thing to say about Joburg. They think that Cape Town is
I know.
Right? It's so weird. They always think Cape Town's the be-all and the end-all, and if someone says something horrible about Cape Town, they get hugely offended, but they don't care about Joburg. And you
I love Joburg.
Yeah, I got to thank you for that, because very few people have the balls to say that, particularly Cape Townians. So nice job on that one. Also, you hate Becky Trele, and I mean, who could love him? You must have said fuck Trele at the end of almost every second chapter of the book, which I thought
I forgot we're on a grown-up show. I can say fuck on this one. I was with the SABC on an interview the other last week, so and I had to be nice there. But yeah, now we can actually say what the hashtag was. It was fuck Trele, and I nothing about my relationship or my view of him has improved since lockdown. If anything,
no,
it's worse.
I mean, it galled me even to think back to the way he told us all we should be in bed by 9 o'clock. Do you remember that nonsense? Like adults,
I was only grateful because I was only grateful for that because I had a teenage son, and I think through lockdown and Trele's rules, I kind of navigated through the trickiest time of his jolling years and kept him aligned to school and rugby. So I'm only grateful for that. But otherwise, it was so patronizing. His whole, no world leader knew how to deal with the pandemic. It was foreign to everybody. There wasn't really a tried and tested way through. But he just milked it with pure ego. And it was the most patronizing display of ego I think I've seen in any politician for a very long time. It was awful.
It wasn't just politicians. I mean, if you cast your mind back to that time, neighbors were telling on each other. You had all these, that's where the word Karen came to prominence. And I don't know, sometimes I think that the word Karen might just be a pejorative. And because it's aimed at a group of people who nobody really has sympathy for, we don't treat it as such. But if you were a white middle-class woman, like being called a Karen it's not exactly a compliment in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I don't think all middle-class white women are Karens, but what do you feel about the meaning of that word? And how do you feel about it even now with the benefit of hindsight?
Yeah, I suppose that we've all got a little bit of Karen in us to a degree. I think sometimes it just comes from a sense of, I speak about situational blindness in the book a lot, and situational blindness is rife in white middle-class South Africa, having not experienced too hard a struggle, but not sort of sitting at the top echelon of earning. We kind of have this glut of the population who feels that privilege isn't something that is theirs. They don't have privilege, and they've kind of lost sight of the fact that you naturally have a degree of privilege by being white. So there's this "it's not fair" sense that comes through, and that's where the Karen comes in. Somebody else is getting more than she thinks is right, or she's not being served correctly, or she just loses sight of her privilege. And it's, I suppose, quite sad in a way that we have that lack of that situational blindness that happens to so many of us in South Africa, because we live in these bubbles where we don't really understand how other communities live, and it works on all sides, not just in one way.
That's true of anyone in any place in the world. I mean, these people, it's only really people who backpack through awful, shitty third world places that really can say that they've done all of that, and usually they're the sort of people who have dirty toenails anyway. So I mean, I'm not particularly charmed by these people who are in outreach mode the whole time, because I think very, very often they're in some way trying to unpack their own guilt over the fact that they're on holiday, and that this is their way of getting to grips with some other culture, because they think it's going to hopefully make them interesting in a life where they've been everything
poverty
but.
tourism stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big
gross.
thing. You see sometimes these people who are desperate to like drive through the poorest places because it gives them a feeling. They think that we see them as being tremendously brave and intrepid and going to explore and understand. But I think a lot of us just see straight through it and see Schadenfreude.
Definitely, absolutely. It's you were chatting about Mandela Day in the clip just before this, and I think that is partially why the intention behind that day has been lost, because it became such a, for TikTok followers, I'm going to do 67 minutes of A, B, and C, and there was there's no long-term benefit to a community or a cause if you just putting on your 67 minutes for your TikTok followers once a year. That's definitely not what Mandela or his foundation had in mind.
Well, I want to get back to your book just for a second, because you do, apart from making us laugh and making us think back to the pandemic, you also tell a very honest and very open and very tough story about your own journey. I mean, in some ways, you talk about kind of privilege, and you and I are probably quite lucky people in that we have a good relationship with our parents. We've had tertiary education under the belt. I mean, if those are considered like the hallmarks of a privileged existence, then I suppose I'll claim to be a recipient of that word and all the things that are attendant to it. But you have also been through a bit of a struggle in terms of trying to figure out where you belong. You became pregnant at a very young age. You've now got 3 kids, am I right?
Yes, I've got 3 and my partner has 1, so we've got a full house.
Right. And you came out at a late stage of life, which I think is really, really interesting. Nobody really talks about this too much. And I think you explained it so beautifully when you talk about how you met Dee and how the two of you got to know each other and how you slowly and beautifully fell in love. I mean, I thought that was a really, a very well-told story, and a story told without too much of, you trying to explain things. It kind of just all happened very nicely. And it was nice to hear that, because you've been through a hell of a journey and you found your person. And for many people, that either never happens or it happens very early in life, and that is the whole story for the rest of their life. And in your case, you've really been through some amazing adventures. Yeah,
I have. And I'm very lucky to say very few regrets. I think that every person that has come through my world or passed through my world as a friend or a lover, they've been good people, and we've been able to learn from each other. And I could not have predicted that in my 40s, I would finally acknowledge that a missing piece may have been that I wasn't quite as straight as my Catholic upbringing had indicated. And again, I've been so fortunate to have, I introduced Dee to my children as my girlfriend, and nobody batted an eyelid. And I'm so grateful that I'm raising kids in a generation where my 13-year-old daughter talks about my husband or wife one day, and it's just not a thing. So yes, it's been amazing to fall so easily in love. Sorry, the dogs are crashing things around here. But fall in love so easily.
They're going to break down your house. There's somewhere in the course.
They were
somewhere
so
in the course
peaceful
of this,
the whole morning.
somewhere in the course of this interview, the whole thing is going to be broken down. I'm sorry, but it's. I'm just pleased to hear it's not like someone who's broken into the house and trying to kill you.
No, it's a pot plant that I've now got to clean up. But that's my circus. And there's no one here to help me. Dee's at work, otherwise she would be holding the dogs in the bedroom or giving me backup plans here. But yes, it's been beautiful to fall easily in love, and at a time where even deep in the burbs with kids at very traditional schools, I can go to a rugby match with my girlfriend, and it's not a thing. If it is a thing for somebody, they certainly haven't said so. I'm sorry.
What dogs do you have? I mean, this is just unbelievable. Whatever's going on in there, it sounds like chaos.
They were so peaceful. The cat came to the window and now they're barking at it. I've got 2 rescue dogs of my own and a foster puppy at the moment. So there's 3 of them kind of cavorting around the lounge here. And I'm sorry.
Well, the noises, my God, it sounds like you're keeping animals from a fictional story about beasts and monsters in your house. It's unbelievable. All right, so to go back to some of these questions, I mean, you'd be forgiven for being angry during lockdown. A lot of us were, and you kind of pigeonhole lots of other people, but you're very honest with yourself about how your own opinion of the lockdowns and the whole attitude towards COVID changed during the period of 2.5 years that we've all been through. How do you think you feel about it now, looking back?
I think I've blocked a lot of the emotion. I definitely went into a bit of a depressive state on and off through lockdown as things got extended, those hideous family meetings. And it just felt like we'd never get back what we'd lost. Some of the more emotional times, my son, I don't know if you were schooled in a school that was rugby before, but he's a very talented little rugby player, and he made first team for Rondebosch Boys High. So last year he got his first cap, and he had to run on to an completely empty stadium or rugby field. All those. And I sat in the kitchen watching the live streaming, and luckily we could have access that way. But this little 7-year-old, I was just picturing this little barefoot rugby 7-year-old rugby has been his passion for as long as I can remember. And there he was running on, representing his school in first team kits. And there was not a single person to watch. And his dad couldn't be there. I couldn't be there. I sat on my own in the kitchen and cried and watched this bizarre rite of passage playing out. Unfortunately, he's in matric this year. So we've had a full season, and I've been able to go there and support every game, and I haven't missed a minute. But there were lots of times in lockdown where we just felt a little robbed, I guess, all of us. Like, are we ever going to get those things back? Will I ever sit around my mother's dining room table with a full house, cousins and my sibling and our children and hug them all again? It felt like it was gone. And there was nobody that could reassure us that it was coming back. It just felt like it was gone. So yeah, there were times where I was super angry, where I felt super alone. I was in sports marketing prior to lockdown happening, so I also had absolutely no income. And it just, it felt like so much was on hold. So there was lots of anger, there was lots of isolation and sadness, and I don't know if I'll ever take that stuff for granted again.
And now, when you look back?
Now, I've tried to see the humor, I suppose, when we look at it. I'm not one of those people who thinks that lockdown or the pandemic came along to reset the world and we all now holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I don't think it was a miracle intervention or anything like that. I think it was just a pretty awful, shitty thing that we had to navigate. And there've been some beneficial elements and work that's come out of it for me, and a book. So I guess I made the most of it.
Yeah, I just think that everybody looking back on this is probably saying to themselves, never again. We're not going to take government seriously when they tell us nonsense. We're not going to believe what the medical fraternities say as if it's the science, as opposed to, figuring it out for ourselves and deciding for ourselves what's right or wrong. And following these rules is just, it was so dumb. I mean, if you look back now on those, the bullshit that they told us we should wear this or we shouldn't wear that. Or, you remember the family meetings on Kwasasana Dlamini Zuma telling us that this is what we're, you're not allowed to go running or jogging. And if you go past people, I mean, it all came back to me. And I also got a bit pissed off reading your book yesterday, because I suddenly thought, how could we have allowed ourselves to be, and I must be honest with you, I never followed any of the rules. I didn't take any of it seriously. I could have cared less. And one of the benefits of being in a country like South Africa is you can just ignore the rules. Nobody cares. I mean, the townships didn't care, and to their credit, they got through it before anyone else.
Yeah, I think I've got mixed feelings around what was right and what was wrong. I don't have that much resentment around, I suppose, the broad rules, but within that, like banning cigarettes and stuff that was just so blatantly political, that it was gross. It was gross that everyone was going through such a tough time, and businesses were, as I said, folding, and families were separated. And then on top of that, you've got to have this greedy, very clearly politically motivated underlying bullshit that really, and South Africa just needs so much less of that.
Yeah, I also think that it's all been politicized to the extent that now, people's attitudes to each other, our attitudes to disease, all of this stuff is so colored by politics now that it makes it very difficult you almost have to check someone out and talk to them for a little bit before you figure out, oh, okay, they're one of those people. Then once you know they're one of those people, I mean those people on both extremes, right? You have the ones who are the conspiracy theorists, who are like total crackpots, who believe that this is all about, implementing some kind of global world order and all of that stuff. Those people you have to talk to in a certain way. And then you get the ones who are like totally in Stockholm syndrome and are still wearing masks, and they're still terrified. They sanitize everything. They kind of look at people who are not wearing masks in a strange way. I mean, you've got to treat these two groups very differently. And then hopefully somewhere in the middle are the sensible people who you can be normal with.
Absolutely. And through a lot of things, I suppose, that shifted and changed, I've also found I don't have the same friend group I had going into this. I found certain opinions and certain narratives, whether they be on social media or in person, got absolutely exhausting. As you said, if one was on the one extreme or on the other, I couldn't. I think we all reached a maximum with that kind of conversation where those two parties were so kind of vehement around the defense of themselves. I felt incredibly sorry for the vast majority of medical professionals. Like, imagine you've gone and studied for flipping how long, and if you specialized, even longer. And then you've got these crackpots on either end taking your kind of career and making extreme opinions out of it. So it's so ill-informed.
But that happened that happened to lawyers during the Oscar Pistorius trial.
True.
I mean, everybody suddenly became a lawyer. You had people who had no understanding of law or Latin, for that matter, talking about, the causal link between X and Y, or, some sort of term about whether or not someone was in breach of some, I don't know, tiny stretch of the statutory law that nobody else knew about. Everyone was an expert. And this is what happens to people, is they all start to think that because they see something on TV or because they read it on social media, that they're an expert. Yes,
it is. I think everyone had some kind of medical degree or homeopathy rubbish or whatever during the pandemic.
Homeopathy.
Yeah. Everyone had some kind of solution for the pandemic that, eventually we have got through it, and definitely lots of Stockholm syndrome left over, and lots of PTSD, and lots of businesses that are still battling to get themselves aligned. Hopefully we keep the work from home rule for a lot longer. I love that.
Did you do any impulse buying?
Impulse buying? No, I don't think I did.
Because I know some people who got completely addicted to online shopping during that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They would. In fact, one of them, who will remain nameless, has become some kind of, there's like a VIP thing inside of takealot.com. If you order like enough stuff, they turn you into, there's a name for it. I don't even know what it is, but there's apparently this category of people who, if you've spent enough with them and you're kind of addicted to shopping on their platform, they eventually make you some kind of VIP, and then you can be guaranteed delivery within 2 days. Whereas plebs like you and me, we don't get to do that because, our order will only come in like 3 weeks if we're lucky.
Yeah. That's cool. I did become completely addicted to grocery shopping online. And then after speaking about Checkers 60/60 enough in all my ramblings, eventually landed myself a copywriting job with the ad agency that has the 60/60 account. So that became my job.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah. That's cool.
So, and I love, and those drivers are cool. They're all my mates now. They're like, hey, how are the little ones? You've been for a run yet? And in lockdown, I think that was like on some days the only adult conversation I had. They're super cool.
Yeah, that isolation, we mustn't forget about that either. So Parallel Parking says wokeness destroyed the youth, TikTok destroyed the workforce, COVID destroyed the economy, but there's still Christmas to look forward to.
I love
Any
Christmas.
comment on that?
I love Christmas. I'm not religious, but I absolutely love Christmas. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, me too. So you also did a bit of radio in your varsity years, right?
I went from a diploma. So I was headed to study journalism at Rhodes University, and then became a mom instead. So it was a different kind of degree, and then ended up doing a PR course at Damlin in Port Elizabeth, and from that got an internship at Algoa FM. That was just after it had privatized and was no longer part of the SABC. And I was in promotions there, and every now and then a short stint as a weather girl in the afternoon drive show with Gordon Graham. It was super fun. And then from there came to Cape Town, where I joined. I did join the SABC after a stint with United Stations, and then left radio altogether.
Well, don't worry. We both have an embarrassing SABC story. Everybody has a bit of that. I think there are people who've just watched it who feel embarrassed. So don't feel too bad.
Shame. They actually did a really cool interview with me, the morning live show. They were good. I wasn't sure what to expect because my memories of the SABC aren't wholesome.
Well, listen, I've got to tell you, this book is fun. And for anybody who wants to remind themselves of how far we've come, take a look at Kim Stevens' book. It's called Hold the Line. It's lots of really cool anecdotes, lots of nice, interesting stories. And of course, as I said earlier, some beautiful stuff too. Your story about kind of finding out that you were pregnant and having to tell your parents when you were at varsity, the story of kind of coming out in your 40s and finding true love. And all of this it's really, really special. I loved it, Kim, and thank you.
Thank you. Gareth, can I just ask one thing before I go?
Sure.
I called you a prick in the book.
Well, I saw, I did see it, but it was a bit of a throwaway comment. You said here.
I was so nervous that you were going to bring that up.
No, you were talking about how I started a game on radio called Would You Rather? And then in one of the questions, you say, I don't have a good capacity to learn a new skill, read a book past page 1, or squiggle some pretty lines on paper. So I say neither. Dumb game, Gareth. Prick. I mean, I'm not insulted by that. That's cool. Thanks for including me in your book.
It's a pleasure. And I was just really worried when I got the message from my publisher that you guys wanted an interview. I'm like, but I called him a prick. She was like, just go with it.
Please.
Okay, so I'm just owning that.
Thank you so much, but don't worry about it. And if I thought that you were an awful person, I wouldn't have invited you on the show. So don't worry.
I really appreciate the interview. Thank you. And thank you for a good, honest platform.
No problem. Always good to have new people and new books, something to read. People have got to get back to reading. That's one way to cure depression, misery, isolation, and all of that stuff. So read Kim's book. It'll make you laugh. Thanks very much, Kim.
Thank you, Gareth. Keep well.
Awesome. Have a good day. Cheers. And a good weekend. Yeah, because it is Friday. The weekend looms on the horizon. It's going to be lots of fun. And if you've got anything cool planned for the weekend, let us know. We want to hear from you. Drop us a comment. We've also got George coming in just a moment or two with some exciting stuff to tell us too. I mentioned the headlines earlier, and we've talked about that Salman Rushdie killer who read 2 pages of the Satanic Verses. Not surprised about that. I saw a great story on the news yesterday that should make South Africans feel like we're not so far behind. I've always thought that Japan is one of those countries which is way ahead of the game. So many things that the Japanese do, the rest of us have yet to discover. And I know that sounds like a kind of generalized, stereotypical, trying too hard comment, but I really do find Japanese culture and society fascinating. It's something that I probably don't understand, which is why I find it so fascinating. But here's something where we're way ahead of them. And when I saw this, I had to read it twice because I wasn't sure that I was, reading a fake article or a real one. So the Japanese government has decided to ask young people to drink more. You heard that right. Since the pandemic, bars and other premises selling alcohol have been hit very hard by restrictions, liquor tax revenues, that sounds familiar, and they've plummeted into the world's, one of the world's, obviously they're the third largest economy in the world, but they're one of the world's worst drinking countries. And this is causing the shutdown of bars. The liquor trade is falling apart. So the government has decided to launch a contest to find new ways to encourage young people to drink more. How do you like that? So for anybody who's been listening to the show for a while, feeling bad whenever we talk about, oh, you know, you're an alcoholic if you drink X, Y, and Z, or drink at this time of day. I think it came up with one of our guests this week. Here is your solution. Go to Japan, because they want you to drink more. They're actively encouraging people. They've got a competition on at the moment, and it's called the Sake Viva campaign, which is overseen by the National Tax Agency. God, I wish SARS would. Imagine if SARS launched a competition for us to drink more. SARS are paying, the Japanese equivalent of SARS are paying for this. They're inviting participants to submit ideas on how to stimulate demand among young people for alcohol. So the domestic alcoholic beverage market is shrinking due to demographic changes, such as the declining birth rate and aging population, and lifestyle changes since the pandemic. They are aiming this competition to appeal to the younger generation and revitalize the drinking industry. It includes promotional ideas for all types of Japanese alcohol, with applications open until September the 9th. Finalists will be invited to an expert consultation in October before the final tournament in Tokyo in November. They'll receive support for their plan to be commercialized, but not everyone is on board. Of course, there are some who are criticizing this, saying, "Are you kidding me? Staying away from alcohol, that's a good thing." Others pointed out that it seemed inappropriate for a government agency to encourage young people to drink, and it appeared the campaign had not considered health risks or sensitivity toward people dealing with alcoholism. I think this is just hilarious, that the Japanese have got a massive campaign on the way to try and get young people to drink more. It's exactly the opposite of a problem we have here. I saw the liquor industry invited Becky Taylor to some conference just yesterday. So it was almost like these two things were running at the same time, and this contrast couldn't have been clearer. And the Minister of Police got up and started shouting and screaming about how we abuse alcohol and people should be taught how to drink. I mean, like, people don't know how to drink. Becky Taylor, really. If people don't know how to drink, you're not paying attention. But you've got Japan on the one hand trying to get people to drink more. And in South Africa, you've got the government trying to get people to drink less. I just think it's all hilarious, right? Humans, pick your team. It's really crazy. Matthew says, as long as they don't encourage drunkenness. Well, yes, Matthew, I don't think that's the point. I think they're trying to get people to have good old fun. Because first of all, in Japan, they're not making enough kids. They've got too many old people, and the young people aren't having sex and having children. So they're trying to get them to do that. And sometimes alcohol is a social lubricant. So we're not talking about drunkenness. Silicide says, just export some of the South African unemployed people from here to there. They won't have that. Japan does not allow you to become a citizen. They have a very low immigration into Japan. You have to marry a Japanese person, and even then, they don't necessarily grant you citizenship. So when we talk about immigration and emigration policies all over the world, border control, you would do well to look at Japan. They just don't have any interest in outsiders becoming citizens. Anyway, Tracy says, my mom was in the wine exporting business for 40 years. Japan used to be her biggest market by a country mile. Just relabel the bottles with paintings of the big five and a dash of gold. Sold. Well, if it's that easy, maybe we could enter the competition, Tracy. Vyasan says the Japanese government needs to send all their people to South Africa for lessons on sex and booze. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's ironic. We live in a country where we do have more young people than old, which is very good. Usually that kind of demographic is an excellent sign for the vitality and the health of a country. And we are clearly good at sex and we're good at booze, even though some people regard those two things as not being necessarily the best foot forward, so to speak. One other quick thing I wanted to throw in before we get to George. Vladimir Putin has revived an award in a similar vein to what we were talking about with Japan, called a Mother Heroine Award for women who have more than 10 children. So actively, again, the Soviets during that time wanted their people to breed so that a young working population, because obviously people were just numbers and they wanted them to be put into service of the state. But even in Russia, post-communist USSR Russia, women with more than 10 children, according to Vladimir Putin, should receive this award called the Mother Heroine Award in an apparent attempt to alleviate the demographic crisis in his country. He has decided to bring it back. And apparently, once it comes into existence, a payment of 1 million rubles will be given to any Russian mother once their 10th child turns 1, if all of them have survived. So unfortunately, Mom, if you lost 2 of them under the age of 1, it doesn't count anymore. If all of your kids are alive and well, and your youngest one of the 10 is still going strong at their first birthday, you get 1 million rubles, which is about $16,000. So I don't know what that would be in South African rands, but it's not nothing. It's nothing to, sneeze at and ignore. Russia's population has shrunk by an average of 86,000 people per month in the latest statistics. That's just between January and May of this year, which is pretty hectic. 86,000 people a month down. In addition, they are suffering heavy losses among troops in the Ukraine, but the number of casualties has not been disclosed. Meanwhile, an estimated 73,000 immigrants have left Russia. Some citizens are fleeing the country in the light of the Ukraine war. Some are leaving because of political crackdowns, search data, immigration figures, flight information. They're all of those things that they've used to show this drop. But Google searches for the terms "how to leave Russia" in the Russian language hit a 10-year high inside the country during the invasion of Ukraine in February. That's quite scary. So a lot of people getting out. During a 30-day period in March, Australia, Turkey, and Israel were some of the top trending destinations, alongside Russia-friendly Serbia and Armenia, as well as Georgia. So people are leaving, and they're not breeding. So Putin's answer to this? Well, just offer rewards so that mothers will have more kids. Why the hell not? Putin is making mothers heroines while Biden is supplying his with heroin. Oh, that's hilarious, parallel parking. I think you're talking about fentanyl, but yes, I get you. Who's going to win this war? I heard that there are over 86,000 people in Japan who are over 100 years old, according to Nico. I don't know if that's true, Nico, but if it is true, that's phenomenal. I mean, we do know that the oldest people in the world, very often the record is held by a Japanese person, usually a Japanese woman. Women outlive men. Mostly, the oldest person in the world is usually a woman. It hasn't been a man for a very, very long time. But here's a much, much younger man than a 100-year-old, and he is here to join us every Friday to tell us about the world of motoring, the lifestyle around it, cars, the petrol price, rules on the road, weird inventions people have come up with, and he himself has pretty much piloted and driven every kind of vehicle available to humans. He is George Meany. How's it, George?
Hey, Gareth. Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good because I have my pilot's license back.
Oh, yay. We were waiting for this. Good.
Yes. Oh, it's like...
Do you think mentioning it on the show last week had anything to do with it, George?
Maybe. I don't know, but I should try it more often. So guess what I'm doing this weekend?
Yeah, flying again. Good man.
Yes.
So, all right, that's very good news. What do you have for us on the agenda today?
So super quick, the tire company?
Sure.
They have partnered with a company called Disky and now an online platform. Disky is an online platform. And you can now go into the fitment center and do your car license. There are 190 Super Quick stores across South Africa. Now, I wasn't sponsored to say that for Super Quick, but I was sponsored by the consumers out there to say that you can go and get your car license at Super Quick. So,
George, anywhere we can get our car licenses, anywhere that makes it easier, and if you can do this while you're having your tires looked at, what a win.
Exactly. So if you go and visit a Super Quick, you can scan the Disky QR code that's there. And when you hit send, you will get a WhatsApp, and there will be a couple of prompts, and you'll make payment, and you can collect your disc within 5 to 10 days from that Super Quick or whichever Super Quick you choose.
Absolutely awesome. Well done to them. Good work. Anybody who can save us time and make things more efficient, we are massive fans of, whether George is sponsored by them or not.
Exactly.
All right. What else have you got for us?
All year for the car buying and driving consumer, which is pretty much all of us, I think.
Definitely.
Then I don't know if you know, Gareth, but tires in their original form were actually not black. So tires are actually this milky white color. If you go back 100 years when they first started making tires for wagons, more than 100 years, and they were predominantly white. This milky white color.
Is that the natural color of rubber, or is that just the color they used to have tires?
No, it's the natural color of the compound rubber that they mixed for tires. And then scientists and researchers were looking for a substance that could make the tire last longer, to stop too much wear, to stop the abrasion on the surfaces, and to make the tire last longer. And then this substance called carbon black was developed or came about. And carbon black is actually a combustion of various petroleum products. It's the byproduct of the combustion of petroleum products. It's actually a throwaway material, and they combined this with the rubber, which then naturally made it black, and that's why our car tires are black.
I thought it was just because they started to look dirty after a while.
They are easier to clean, and they hide the dirt nicely, but that's not the reason they're black, though.
Okay, well, I've sort of seen in these documentaries where they show how rubber was first farmed, how they would obtain it from these rubber trees, and it does come out of the trees. Obviously, it's this white sort of syrupy stuff. And it was apparently it always used to be a very, very difficult thing to obtain because it's hard work. It's a tough job. It's not the kind of job everybody's lining up to do. So there was also, obviously, there was slavery in the Congo, and a lot of this is where we started to develop the rubber trade from. So it doesn't have the greatest history. But I had no idea that it would stay that white color, and that we actually had to color it. So they put in this carbon black, and that's where our tires come up with their black color now.
Yeah, and it's predominantly because of a longevity or abrasion. The carbon black stops the tire from degrading as fast.
Okay, right. So it also performs a practical function. It's not just to look good. It's not just so it doesn't look as dirty. I really thought it was just to mask the filth of the roads.
Well, yeah, I think it's probably a dual purpose, but mainly the abrasion. So. And here's an interesting one, Gareth. Singing in your car is good for your health.
Yeah,
so,
I believe this.
First of all, when you sing, particularly in your car, because it's a closed cockpit, positive neurotransmitters, as researchers have found, get released in your brain and body. Oxytocin, serotonin. Then the second thing is singing is also good for your lungs and cardiovascular system, because guess what you have to do when you sing? You have to take deep breaths and, exert yourself. So it's good for your lungs and your cardiovascular system.
I love it.
And then,
I thought it was just me, but it always makes me feel better in the car when I'm driving and singing. And I do. Sometimes I have to stop myself because I'm like, if people see me doing this, they're going to think there's something wrong with me. I'm mentally ill.
Well, yeah. It takes singing in the shower to a whole new level when you're singing in the car, because you get this person next to you miming, and you don't know what they're singing.
George, do you just to go back to tires for a second,
Sure.
because there are a lot of questions about tires here in the comments, but do you spell tire with a Y or an I? I can never figure that out, and I've seen it spelled both ways, so I'm not even sure what the correct spelling is. Do you know?
Interesting question. The tire with an I is actually an American spelling. And tire with a Y is our spelling, because we come from Roman Dutch and English history.
Okay. All right. So that's answered the question then. A couple of other people. First of all, Molly Curry says, I referred a friend to Auto Trader. He phoned to inquire about a vehicle and the salesman said, sold. Goodbye. How's that? Eh?
Okay,
Nice
well,
job. So there's some
whether
nice
that's a
feedback.
good or a bad thing, I'm sorry it was sold, but that's how fast it works.
Well, I think that's amazing. I mean, that's great feedback. It shows you that that what you guys are doing is happening faster and better than anyone else. Borge says, Congo Chris, I have a technical question. How do EVs measure up against diesel when it comes to torque? Are they a viable option for moving weight and pulling trailers?
Oh, a very interesting question, Congo Chris. And the answer is EVs are much better at moving things around and at torque, as you put it. There's actually a couple of videos you can go search for online. They put a EV up against a Ford F-150, the electric Ford F-150 against a regular ICE 4x4, and the EV tows that ICE right backwards.
Very, very nice. Okay, cool. Awesome. So there are a couple of questions answered. You see, George, we need you here on a Friday. Otherwise, people sit around pondering these things for week after week. Thank God we got you to ask. What else you got for us?
So carrying on with the singing, very lastly, singing increases a substance called, and I'm going to try and say this, immunoglobulin in your saliva.
Immunoglobulin. Yeah.
Immunoglobulin. There we go. You see, so I couldn't even.
Cool.
And at the same time reduces cortisol. So if you reduce cortisol and you increase immunoglobulin in your saliva, your body can ward off illness a little bit better. So singing in your car is a really, really good thing. And then finally, I'm very interested in this one, and that is why
do you have any recommendations about what we should be singing in the car, George? What songs are guaranteed to make us feel better?
Whatever comes to mind. I mean, if it's from The Hills Are Alive to Metallica, sing your heart out.
All right.
And then very lastly, Gareth, why are cars designed to go over the speed limit?
Because you want to know that you're driving some kind of invention that has an upper limit. You want to see how far they've pushed the technology. You want to know that you're driving something that has performance built into it. It's not about just following stupid traffic rules.
Exactly. So a lot of what you said there is very true. And we went and dug to see what the reason is that a car can do 200 kilometers an hour when the speed limit is only 120. Yeah. So most of the answer is emergencies. That's the answer that comes up a lot, but it's not the only answer. So the technical answer is when top speed increases, typically quicker acceleration is also a feature of the car.
Right.
So in order to get quicker acceleration and efficient acceleration, you have to have a car that can go faster than the speed limit generally. And then faster cars are also designed with better dynamics and cornering abilities, because the car manufacturer and designer has to design the car to be able to drive at the speed that it can attain.
Right.
It's got better cornering and dynamic abilities.
But also the stupid rules come in after the car. The car doesn't come into existence with the rules already in place. So the car was there first. It's a chicken and egg situation. The car was there first. People have always wanted to see how fast a car can go. That's why there are still people building, cars that can break the land speed record and planes that can fly faster than any other plane. We want to see how far our ingenuity can take us. And then we invent these rules so that we can all live peacefully together and cause as little damage to each other as possible. But you can't have the one before the other.
Exactly. That's also very true. Not in my list, but Gareth raises a good point, and that is.
Right. There's one other thing though. So I've got to ask you about this, because I was lying in bed 2 nights ago and I heard these guys like dicing cars on the road outside where I live, like really fast at like midnight or whatever it was. And these cars are super loud, and clearly law enforcement have just got no interest in stopping this kind of thing. Is that something that happens all over the country, or is it something that people are now getting away with that they didn't get away with before? Do you know anything about these guys who like drive really, really fast with very loud cars late at night on open stretches of road?
Yeah, so there for decades already there has been illegal street racing, which is frowned upon, and even I frown upon it, because if you visit these illegal street races, oftentimes the people are standing right next to the road, and oftentimes the cars that are in these illegal street races can't be handled by the driver. And then can cause some serious injury to the human being standing on the side. And then very often alcohol's involved, and so it's a very uncontrolled environment. So if that is happening around your area, these illegal street races, they're quite often underground. They move around from place to place, and law enforcement have been trying to clamp down on them for 2-3 decades. Because it does happen. It does happen late at night, and it happens randomly. So where people get together with their fast cars.
Yeah, I've seen those. I'm sure you have too. Those videos of people who've lost control of their car on some stretch of highway where they think, nobody. And there are these crowds that gather to watch this stuff, actually.
Yes.
And these people spin out of control, and they can either kill bunches of people in the crowd, or they wipe themselves out, which is never really a bad thing if they're just wiping themselves out. But of course, their car lies all over the road. And the next day when people need to use that road, it first needs to be cleared up.
Yeah, exactly. So, a couple of organizations have tried to put together drag strip, organized racing, and that has curbed it to a certain degree, but it's still a problem.
All right. Sorry, I just had to ask about that because it was on my mind from 2 nights ago. But thank you, George.
Good question.
Yeah, as always, lots of interaction from everybody else. People love it. Thank you very much. With another episode of the Auto Trader podcast coming up this week. Don't miss George and the rest of the crew. All right. Have a lovely weekend.